Hello, everybody. This is the No Name Cinema Society. It's our Indie Spotlight. We are here to talk about the indie Sleepwalk with me from 2012. My name is Jonathan Betzler, and I'm one of your hosts. As you might be able to see, I am back in New York now. Fans might recognize this backdrop. After a month away, I was in LA for a little bit. Now I'm back in New York for a short jaunt here. And I'm in Astoria with cat sitting. The cat is scared of the other guys, so I have his painting behind me over my left shoulder. So as we've been doing, we for each year we spotlight indie films from 5 years ago. So this year, spotlighting indie films from 2012, and of course tonight is Sleepwalk with me. And let me introduce my co-host tonight. First, the overbearing father figure of our group, Jay Money. Welcome.
Hello.
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 Jay Money, your background is very different.
Yeah, I try to keep it fresh for you guys. Not just for you, for the home audience as well.
I mean, like, Davey and I roam so much over the course of all these shows. You know, you're the only one that's never done a show outside of your apartment.
Right. Well, maybe I've been doing it in a different spot every time lately. What if you don't really know. You don't know if this is the same apartment every time now or not.
That's right. And apparently all we're able to really tell is you've got a very extensive drape collection or rugs.
Right. It's where I've sunk all my money, JB. I don't know if it was apparent before, but I'm just putting everything into textiles.
That's where it went.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it had to go somewhere. And that other voice that you hear, of course, is my pizza-flavored ice cream, Dave Joseph.
There you go. It's a pillow. Pizza flavored pillow, right?
There's also pizza-flavored ice cream.
Ice cream. Yeah, you're right.
Thanks for paying attention to the movie, Davey. Anyway, so what do you got? What do you got drinking, my man, Jay Money?
Well, I'm still slowly working through a collection of Founders beer.
Strangely enough, I'm still working through a collection of the BBR.
You bought a lot of that.
I did. It was $2. If you remember the show we did in Atomic Blonde, these were $2. So I bought a bunch, and they were still here when I got back. So I like PBR. It's cheap and it's tasty.
It is definitely cheap.
So guys, our schedule, this is our 42nd set of episodes. Today, of course, we're doing our Indie Spotlight, Sleepwalk with me. In 4 days is when we talk about our classic Western Will Penny from 1967. Sort of an offbeat choice there. And our 26th sound off, and it's going to be a special one because we have a very special announcement coming. We're going to answer your question. You asked us to recast some of our favorite 1966 films with modern actors. We're going to do that. And I'm going to do my top 5 films directed by comedians in honor of Sleepwalk with me. So stand-up comedians at that. So these guys really challenged me with this top 5. That's all coming up in the next couple weeks on this show. Our trivia for Sleepwalk with me was the following. A well-known comedian collaborates with his NPR buddy to turn his affliction into a movie that is our next Indie Spotlight. That was the trivia, and the comedian, of course, is Mike Birbiglia. The NPR buddy is Ira Glass from This American Life, who was a producer on the film. And the affliction, you might know, is at this point is REM sleep disorder, which Mike Birbiglia has in real life. It became a part of his stand-up routine and then became this movie. So that was the trivia tidbit, and I hope you guys answered it. Not that we have prizes or anything. So guys, are you ready for the summer? Do you have anything you want to comment on?
That's good.
Please give us a summary.
They want the summary, and they want it now. Well, guys, Matt is an aspiring comedian who's been with his beautiful girlfriend, Abby, for 8 years. As his sister gets engaged, Abby starts to wonder about her future with Matt, which causes Matt more stress than he understands. The result is a series of episodes where Matt sleepwalks, or more appropriately, acts out his dreams, which start out as funny anecdotes, but it quickly turns dangerous. How do you guys feel about that summary?
Good enough.
Excellent.
Good enough. That's like the worst review I've ever gotten on a summary. So that's like a Davy scale, like solid on the summary. So as you guys may have figured out, you in the audience, this is my recommendation. I actually got to see an advanced screening in 2012 of this film at the Writers Guild Theater in Los Angeles. It was and there was a panel afterwards moderated by Joss Whedon, of all people, And on the panel was Mike Birbiglia and Ira Glass, and they answered questions from the audience and so forth and so on. I had photos of the incident, but all the photos featured my ex-girlfriend. She took some photos with both Mike Birbiglia and Ira Glass, but she refused to let me use them for this show. So I apologize. I think she was more concerned about these guys seeing her face than you guys in the audience.
I mean, I feel like it's incredibly appropriate for this subject matter, so it feels like it's probably fitting. It's a fitting story for this whole thing.
Maybe. So I don't have photos of the event, but you have to trust me, I was there. Now, why I like the film, it really centers around Mike Birbiglia himself. I mean, I think that his charm, his delivery, and his comic timing really make the film special. He's a natural storyteller. Overall, I found the film funny, touching, and real. I think from cinematic point of view, there's a terrific use of iconography to make what was essentially a stand-up routine into something more filmic. Had you guys seen this film before or heard it before having to watch it for this show?
I had seen it before.
Oh, Davey Joe had seen it. That's a rare one. This is the first indie that you had actually seen in a really long time.
Yeah, in a while, yeah.
Except for the ones you recommended. I can't remember a single one. J Money, what about you?
Well, I hadn't seen it before, but I was very familiar with the story. I'd heard it on This American Life a couple times, and I think I'd also actually heard Birbiglia himself do it a couple times. So I was super familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it's time for opening thoughts, and David Joe goes first.
Yeah, I mean, I have to echo what you said. It's just he's a really funny guy, and his delivery's great, and he's kind of got this kind of naive way of delivering lines that I don't know, it hits me. It's funny.
Self-deprecating is the word that I was going to use later, and I in lieu of naive, but I see where you're going with that. J Money.
Yeah, I feel like either you like this comic or you don't, and that probably determines whether or not you like this movie, because this movie is an extension of him and his personality. You know, I find him charming. I find him charming because I think of the self-deprecating nature we just talked about. I know he doesn't rub everyone the right way, so I think this movie is so tied to that probably is an indication of whether or not you liked it or not.
Does he have is he controversial? Like, does he really rub people the wrong way?
He's not controversial, but I mean, I don't think everybody appreciates his style. I don't think everybody appreciates the long form sort of self sort of diagnosis nature of everything. So, it's a specific style of
comic storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an art form all to himself. I mean, like, we talked about his charm, we talked about his self-deprecating nature. His timing is special. I think it's almost got a Michael J. Fox kind of delay to it that I really appreciate. Also, his everyman approach. I find him completely relatable, identifiable in that regard.
I'm a soft yes on that because I think that the storyline and his humor in general characterizes a sort of like common thread of man-child stuff that we talk about in film and also in comedy. So I don't think it necessarily, I understand why people criticize that aspect of it. I understand why people criticize him to some degree, because I do think it's a very specific trope. I don't know if I would say, I mean, he's an everyman in the sense that he's not like, he doesn't seem, he seems very approachable and human, but I don't think that,
right.
But the flip side of this is that he also has some annoying qualities, I think, to himself. So,
Learning the movie by creating a very real person that you can also identify with, despite much less screen time. I've been in her circle for a long time and seen her work. She's done a lot of small indies over the years. I think she's highly underused and highly underappreciated as an actress. She totally needs to work more. I think she really adds some gravitas to this movie as Abby the girlfriend. Davey, it looks like you're nodding. It's hard to tell.
No, I thought she was great. I thought she was great, and I think you need to cast her, man, so she does work more.
It's funny because there was talks about her doing a reading of mine back in the day.
Wow. No, that'd be awesome.
2000s, but yeah, she's a good one. J Money, do you disagree?
No, I like Lauren Ambrose a lot, and I think that she did a great job in this film. Especially for what you're saying, she wasn't necessarily in it a hell of a lot, but she seemed incredibly human, and she seemed to kind of like inhabit the character very well.
That's exactly it. On the flip side of that, the parents are some great actors, James Redhorn and Carol Kane. Cute moments with them, but highly underwritten, not really worthy of these actors. That was a quibble that I had. I mean, they felt sort of one note to me.
Yeah, well, the thing with this whole movie in general is that it's basically an oral story, right? So I guess I feel like, especially with those characters specifically, they're background characters. They would be in the story just like mentioned in a few scenes because they're padding out the diegesis. But I also feel like they're not really characters because they're assumed that they're parents. Like they're assumed that they're stereotypes of a parent.
I'm trying to decide if you use the term diegesis properly, but I'm going to let it go because I think it's borderline. Let's segue to talk about.
Anytime we mention diegesis, I want everybody at home to drink. It's just.
Oh, I just learned last night that I can't tell you what it is because I don't want to make anybody self-conscious, but there is a drinking game associated. I did not know this. A fan told me. And it's specifically related to Davey, which is the cutest thing ever. But I think there is a drinking game related to the show that I was very excited to hear about.
That's good.
But I wanted to continue because I don't want David to stop. He does.
You think I'd stop? Whatever it is.
I mean, I think you might get self-conscious. Yeah.
No.
Anyway, the direction movie. I mentioned in my opening remarks that iconography was a really smart way to take this stand-up act, assign meaning to certain visual things, and utilize them throughout the film. I think of things like what you mentioned earlier, Davey, the pizza pillow. I think about the way they use their wedding reality show, the Hooters girl, things like that played the film in a very meaningful, effective way, particularly in the dream sequences, which I found to be the most inspiring moments of the film. And an example for you guys right now, this is a clip that we call the Dustbuster Olympics.
You did it, Matt. Third place.
Third place? What? I didn't even know this is a competition. More preparation. Third place in what?
Dustbustering.
Matt, looks like there's been a mistake. You actually got first place. You're so beautiful.
You have to move.
I got first place. I'll
go get a Band-Aid.
Those characters that gave him the medal, like he had seen them the night before on his girlfriend's, she's been watching a lot of wedding reality shows because she wants to get married, and so that all plays into his dream, and all that sort of fuses together very nicely, and that stuff is really cinematic, and I think it takes the film outside of this stand-up routine and sort of brings it to life in an engaging, amusing, entertaining way. So guys, anything on what I've just said the last minute or so?
No, I mean, I think the scene, especially the scene that you just showed, it's kind of funny, but it also shows the gravity, no pun, of the situation.
I mean, at the end of the clip we just saw, he falls off like a tall dresser.
Yeah, it's dangerous, and the fact that he lets it go as long as he does, it's a little scary.
I can identify with that as well because I also I don't even have health insurance, let alone doctors. J Money, what do you have to say about this iconography idea?
Well, I think it's a nice touch because it adds a little more personality to the rest of the film. In general, I think the struggle with this film is that it has to get away from feeling like it is a stage film in a lot of ways. And I think he successfully does that, by creating all these different things that you're talking about, by showcasing the external monologue in the car, and by like creating all these little moments from the dream sequences, which actually feel like storyline. Yeah, I think that's one of the better, well constructed aspects of this film.
We'll get to the less well constructed. In fact, I'm going to talk about some of the directorial issues I had, one of which shot choices, because they're extremely basic from a coverage point of view. A mastering coverage, if that, just enough to tell the story, which is okay in this situation because it really puts the focus on the story. It doesn't distract us too much with the style. Sometimes I wish that a little more thought would have been put into it, but I actually just today, I watched his second film, which came out last year. He did experiment a little more with various coverage ideas. So we're about to stop here. The other issue I had was, again, sort of a first-time filmmaker thing, is the blocking was extremely basic. And by blocking, I mean blocking for camera, staging for the camera. And you think about the way that he orchestrated these scenes, and some of them are long scenes. People are just basically sitting and talking. That's where it doesn't feel as cinematic. I mean, like, it sort of like, but not really. Like, people usually are doing more things. And at one point, like, it's almost like he was aware of that to some degree. So at one point he had a scene with his sister where they're literally walking down the street to mail a letter. Like that, he's like, let's do something. Let's mail a letter. And that felt a little like, I got to figure out something to do, because it's not like the letter itself had anything to do with the plot. And why is he accompanying her on a letter walking mission? Like, it was a little awkward. That sort of thing crept up throughout the film and sort of brought it down a little bit. One well-blocked scene I will point out is the scene him and Abby have a discussion on the floor when Abby's drunk at one point, where they're talking about their future. And that bringing him to the floor worked really well and was sort of an unusual blocking choice. And the way that they cut that scene together also worked very well, showing the passage of time. That was an exception. I think that was a pretty good scene. Blocking, anything, guys?
Yeah, I mean, in general, to me, this felt like a student film. It felt like a very put together on a shoestring budget, sort of like passion project or labor of love. I mean, part of it is I recognize a lot of the sets, because I know some of the places they shot, and I know they doubled up on a bunch of things to shoot in different locations. Like, I know there was a bunch of scenes shot in the same place, and that took place over the whole, because obviously they had to. So there were all these things that I could see around the edges of, where I'm like, I can tell that they don't have a lot of money and they're trying to just work with whatever they have. And there's a charming quality to that. But at the same time, to me, it felt like a very, like a side project movie. It didn't feel like a real movie. And I think all of that added up to me wondering what the point of doing it at all was, really, ultimately. I mean, I don't want to go too far off track here.
No, I mean, like, I understand that point. I can see that, but I enjoyed the ride. So that was the point of doing it for me. I was interested in the experience and the story. I don't know why he even bothered to change his name, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I see your point about it doesn't feel like a movie. I think the dream sequences help elevate it in that regard, add some visual flourish. It's a movie because it's a story someone wanted to tell. It was personal to them, and I appreciated how personal it was. What I mean? I felt that through the film.
But it had already been told. I don't know are you familiar with the original version?
I mean, I had seen this first, and that got me interested in more about Mike Birbiglia overall.
Okay, so I think maybe my being so familiar with the story to begin with is what detracted from me, because frankly, I think the radio version is better.
And
I mean, honestly,
in that sense, it makes sense to make a movie to reach a wider audience to tell this story.
I understand that, but at the same time, like I'm pretty sure people that saw this movie are probably also people that listen to like This American Life. Like, it's a very specific demographic. I really don't know how much this possibly expanded beyond his reach.
But he got it. But by making the movie, he got a new fan in me, at least.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I think it's been distributed now. It's been on Netflix, and I think by now it's gotten a wider audience. I do think, though, J Money's probably right as far as who saw it in the theater. It's probably a lot of overlap.
I understand it has a life beyond on the actual storyline itself. I just feel like there was a lot of other things that were like, I feel like the story was replicated in a lot of ways besides the movie. So to me, it's like the movie itself actually it didn't add anything to the story I was already familiar with, and that was kind of a distraction for me.
And it all depends on how you experience it first. But I did think that there were a number of things that helped with that. And the screenplay structure is one of them, because if you think about it, there's four main elements to the story. There's the main story, there's the dream sequences, there's the flashbacks, and there's the part where he's talking to the camera, which makes, incidentally, that sort of makes the flashbacks flashbacks within flashbacks. If you think about the talking to the camera portion as the present, all of those elements I think are intertwined comfortably in the story. Like that seems like a lot to weave together. And from a screenplay point of view, I feel like this does it pretty well. And that's something that I don't think is replicated in the stand-up act.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a level of complexity that is kind of easier to do on film than on a radio play or just a stand-up routine.
I would say that I don't think that the complexity was necessary. I don't know if the complexity really added anything to the whole major, sort of enjoyment of the original story.
I mean, it's hard to say because I watched this first. You know what I mean? So
I know. It's in a way, it's almost like I feel like I have to recuse myself from reviewing this movie because I feel like it's like I guess I feel like I was too familiar with it in some ways to really think about it objectively.
Perhaps
it's funny. I had heard on the radio before I saw the movie, and it didn't bother me as much. But I can see. I mean, sometimes it's just tough to know a story and have to sit through it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard it a couple times. I think I've heard This American Life version of it a couple times. I feel like I've also actually seen Birbiglia do parts of it before in his stand-up. So I guess I feel like I've already been, I've had a couple of touch points exposed to it. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys, because it was the talking to the camera element of it. It's like the stand-up routine, I guess, but on film, it's somewhat unusual. Obviously, there's some examples historically, like Ferris Bueller, probably a famous example. And it's almost like it's almost like voiceover, but I liked it here. It embraced the concept of storytelling and the art of storytelling and the artifice of the film itself. In this way that he talks to the camera, his charm takes center stage because he doesn't really use it as a tool or a crutch to give information. Anything he needs to show, he does. Really, the talking to the camera portion is just amusing commentary and reflective musings on the action as it's happening, which I found refreshing and charming is the word I keep coming back to.
It's appropriate. It's a stand-up story. You get to see his expression and his delivery, and it fits in perfectly.
I liked it, and I was expecting you guys to be surprised that I liked it. Yeah,
it doesn't strike me as real voiceover. I mean, I understand why. If you hadn't seen him, I think you would have disliked it.
I don't know. I think it worked in the movie. I think the movie moved and had a good pace. I had those quibbles, which were student filmy type mistakes. To your point, J Money, like my quibbles were very basic first timer kind of mistakes and low budgety mistakes. David Joe.
I think Jay Money's got a point though. I don't think it would have been nearly as good. It might have been obnoxious had we not been able to see him.
I agree with that too. I thought you were saying something else. Okay, so guys, I mean, like that's pretty much all I've got to say. We're out of time anyway. But have we covered Sleepwalk with Me? Jay Money wants to recuse himself anyway. But have we? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you guys want to talk about? It's like we mostly like it. Maybe Jay Money the least.
I feel bad about that because I really like Mike Birbiglia a lot, and I like the story a lot. And I saw the other movie you referenced at one point, Don't Think Twice, when it was in the theaters, and I thought that was. I really enjoyed it, and it's funny because he came out at the end of it. Surprisingly, I saw it at BAM, and he came out at the very end, and was just like, "Hey, I'm here. I want to talk to the audience," and he did that.
Wow!
And that's one of the really enjoyable things about Mike Birbiglia is that he's just a real normal human kind of guy.
Yeah. And if you think watching improv groups live is annoying, then try watching this movie.
Well, I like improv groups. It's fine. I understand. I mean, I understand why it's not everybody's taste. I really do. But I didn't have a problem with the movie.
I didn't like it.
But to your point, JB, you do see an evolution in terms of production, quite a bit between this movie and that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, this movie felt even a little more personal and honest, and I really appreciated that. So anyway, David Joe, anything before I close it out?
No.
So that's it for Sleepwalk with Me. We've just about covered everything on that. That was our Indie Spotlight for tonight. Our next Indie Spotlight is coming up, who knows, the end of September, early October. We'll keep you posted on that. Stay tuned on Facebook and Twitter, etc. But the trivia is an actress with a famous director as a grandfather writes a screenplay for her and her real-life boyfriend to star in. And that is our Indie Spotlight for next time. But before then, we're going to do our classic movie discussion, our most popular segment. We got a random kind of film to talk to you guys about. It's called Will Penny from 1967. And that will be our classic movie discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you then.